Hello, everybody, and welcome to week 2 of Intro Psych. I am open to the week 2 tab here, and as you can see, we're going to be covering chapter 1, the science of psychology, during this week. So, like I said in the previous podcast, if you listened during week 1, I'll always give you a to-do list, which gives you the rundown of what's going on for the week. Mostly just as reminders. Everything is in your syllabus, so you can always refer to that. But oftentimes, I'll post reminders here about what's coming up and what's due. If any dates change or anything's different from the syllabus, I would post that here as well. So it's good to look this over at the very beginning of the week as soon as I make this tab available to you, which is usually by Sunday night, and then kind of get a sense of what's going to be going on for the week. So let's just run down here and see what I've put in here for you. We have the objectives for the chapter. So again, I always give you the kind of overview of what you should know once you're finished reading the chapter and once you've finished sort of going through and digesting the material. Here are the objectives, the goals of the chapter, what you should come away with. So in this chapter, really what it's doing is introducing you to the field of psychology as a science. What does that mean? What are the goals in the psychological sciences? A little bit of the history of where we've been as a discipline and where we are at today. So it'll introduce you to some big names that you're going to be hearing over the course of the semester. In other areas as we cover other chapters in the textbook. It also is going to go over some basics with you as to who's who in psychology. You hear a lot of terms today, everything from psychiatrist to psychologist to social worker, and how do these differ? What kind of jobs do they hold? So for anyone who's undeclared or considering even psychology a little bit, this might be a great chapter to pay attention to get information as to who are psychologists, what are the various roles that they can play, what are the types of careers that they can have, what kind of education would you need to attain to become one of those individuals. So it's going to lay that all out for you. And that's pretty much the first half of the chapter. And then the last half of the chapter starts to get into the research in psychology as well as ethics. So how do we conduct research studies in the field of psychology? What types of methodological designs would we be using? And when we say that, it basically means different ways of setting up a study based on what it is you want to study. Okay, so we're looking at behavior of individuals, but we can do that in many different ways. We can choose to observe people just in their natural habitat, or we can choose to intervene and survey people, ask questions, gather data. We can choose to do an experimental study where we actually kind of manipulate some things and then see how it plays out. There are definitely advantages and disadvantages associated with every type of design, no matter what you do. So it's important to know what those are. If you have a question that you want answered, you have a hypothesis about something, about the way people act or behave, and you're going to design a study to test that hypothesis and see how it plays out, you're going to want to use the best design for your study to get at the question that you're looking for. And so it'll take you through the rundown of each type of study, pros and cons, defining for you lots of new variables and probably terminology that you may not have heard of before. So just let it all sink in. This is a good chapter to take some note cards and write down definitions as you're going through, particularly when we come to experimental studies and it starts getting into independent variables and dependent variables and what's a control group and what's a experimental group, what is random assignment. It's a lot of terms that you may not be familiar with, Now, if you've taken intro psych, maybe in high school, you might have had some experience with this, some exposure to these terms, but if not, good to have those note cards next to you so you can really zone in on what these terms mean. You have to know all the players, okay? So it's kind of like watching a football game. You have to know the positions of the players to know what their role is and what they do and how they're vital to the team. And it's the same thing when we're looking at different kinds of studies. You know, you want to know what does what and why. So good deal of time spent looking at that. And then lastly, ending with some ethics and research. It's going to talk a little bit about some unethical studies that have been done early on in the field of psychology before the board existed, that really governing board whose job it is to examine proposed studies and determine what is ethical and what isn't ethical. And that is governed by the American Psychological Association. And usually we refer to a board of that kind as, you know, the human research board or ethics board. You can find these at different colleges where research is conducted, or universities, or any kind of institution that's conducting research would need to have a governing body that would determine what is and isn't ethical when we're doing research either with animals or with people. So a good deal of time is spent there. That's going to piggyback a little bit on the Hawk preface reading, which you either did last week or maybe you are going to do this week. Doesn't really matter as long as it's done before you go ahead and try to write your discussion board answers for the week, because in the Hawk preface it talks about ethics. So you not only get it in the textbook, but you're also getting it in the Hawk reading, where it talks about animal research and human research and what's okay and what's not okay. So that's a rundown of the objectives for the chapter. Here are the lecture slides. These are great to print out. Maybe in the format where you have 3 slides per page with some notes next to it. And you can have those next to you as you're reading through the chapter. You can even, if you have the e-text of the textbook, have the audio read to you. So the e-text has the option of audio for every chapter, and it will actually read the chapter to you. And that's nice because you can be looking at it, reading it, and writing down notes in the lecture slides as you go. And that's really handy. It's the best way to take in the information because it's most similar to what you would be doing in an in-class setting. I've attached for you, here's the slides. I'm sorry. These are the slides. Here is the PDF of Chapter 1 and the PDF of the Hawk preface. I know there's some issues with students getting books. The bookstores had a little bit of a delay. They had a bunch of books, and now they've had a delay on getting more. So in the meantime, while they're waiting for those to come in, you shouldn't have any problem getting started on the work, because here is the PDF of Chapter 1 and here's the PDF of the Hawk preface. That'll get you started reading. You can download those and start reading, and here are your slides for Chapter 1, your lecture slides. So that's all the materials per se that you need to get started on the reading for the class. Then you're going to be watching videos, okay? So if you are waiting on your books and you haven't gotten the MyPsychLab, you can actually go to pearsonhighered.com and you can get a temporary access to MyPsychLab. It'll give you a 2-week access and it's free. At least that way you have it and you can start watching the videos, because the videos are in MyPsychLab and you got to have that in order to watch them. Then once you get your access to MyPsychLab, then you'll be fine. You won't need to have that trial access anymore, and you can just go ahead and use your permanent access. But we're going to be watching the videos in episode 1 and episode 2. So that covers intro to psych and research methods in psych. You just want to follow the instructions here to access those videos. We have your first discussion boards will happen this week. Just to reiterate, I have the rubric for how to do your discussion boards here. You want to click on that, open that, read it, maybe print it out. I also included a podcast, which might be helpful for you to knowing how to do the discussion boards. Basically what you're doing is, here's your week 2 discussion. I've posted one question, okay? It has to do with ethics. And so this is going to involve you using what you learned in chapter 1 and what you learned in the preface of the Hawk reading to come up with an answer to this question about ethics with animal subjects and human participants. You want to be citing and using examples from the readings as you're answering this, which is why you have to do the readings first. This is going to be your original post. So when you click in here, it's going to open a new thread. And your new thread, you can label it week 2 discussion. That's fine. And you're going to answer this question in that thread. Okay. And that's to be done by Thursday, every week by Thursday. Then by Saturday, once everyone's posted their responses to this question, then you're going to go in and you're going to look at what people said. You're going to go back into the discussion and click on it, and you're going to see everyone's posts there. Pick 1, 2, 3, okay? 3 posts, and they can be any ones you want. Maybe you look through a few of them before you decide, and then you're going to respond to 3 people. Okay, so you're going to comment on what they wrote. And your comments really need to go beyond, oh, this was a great post, I really like what you said, or I agree with you. They really need to extend the dialogue. So take what someone said and insert more, give more examples, bring up stuff maybe that they didn't say that relate to what they were talking about. Any way, shape, or form that you can do that. And here again is where you should be citing the readings, okay, and citing what you learned in the chapter and in the Hawk reading to really zone in on what it is you want to say and show me that you're able to put those thoughts together in response to people's threads. Okay, so that's the discussion. Again, here are those cite as you write instructions that will help you out a little bit in how to cite your sources, so make sure you read those over. Lastly, for the week, we do have a quiz. It's on chapter 1. That's due by Friday. Okay, so discussion posts come first, and then comes the quiz. And the quiz is quick. It's 10 questions. But if you want to prepare for it, you could go into my psych lab, and there's quizzes for chapter 1, and you can do those quizzes first and kind of see how you do and see if if you did well or not, and then you can come in here and take these. The ones on my psych lab I do not grade. They're simply for you as a study tool to help you for this quiz here. Lastly, just want to remind everyone about the mandatory intro psych assessment. It's to be completed by February 10th, so I know that's a little bit off, but not too far off. It's next week. So you want to complete this pre-assessment. You want to be looking for an email from Sona Systems. It's going to come to your email sometime this week, if it hasn't already. And you're going to just click on that email and follow the instructions to complete the psych pre-assessment. It's a quick test. No experience necessary, don't need to study. It doesn't affect your grade, except that if you don't do it, you will get an incomplete in the class. So it has to be completed. Okay, any questions regarding this assessment, you don't get the email from Sona, you can direct questions to Dr. Daniel or Dr. Camilleri, who can help you with that. Okay, mostly if it's a Sona question, like you didn't get the email, you can address your questions to Dr. Daniel here at this email address, and he will help you. But other than that, that's your week in view. Please email me this week if you get stuck on anything or have any questions. Best way is to email me, and I would be glad to help. But good luck, everyone, in your first full week of Intro Psych.